Thank you. Before we start, can I just say one other, I want to also just remember Oren Wexberg, also, who is no longer with us, but was one of the co-producers of this film as well.
Who might also be around.
But he's here with us tonight.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for, we'll get into it in a minute, all the work you guys, the massive amount of work that went into this, making a moment like this even possible. But I want to, and maybe we could all just say thank you to these two for giving this film back to us. But to start, I think I'd like to start in maybe the humanness of it all. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your uncle's relationship with Robert Wilson.
Well, Howard, I just have discovered, and myself included, had this extraordinary capacity to connect with people. And actually, when I spoke with Bob about how this project came about, he told me he had been working on this project since 1979, and he met Howard, and Howard proposed the idea of making a film about this process. And Bob was, not really comfortable with that. He said, I'm not really a fan of talking. I'm not comfortable with people documenting me. He told me there had been a number of books written on him. He never read any of them. But with Howard, it felt different because he trusted him. And I think you can see that. I mean, in the film, there's a real warmth, and that's a testament to who he was as a person, which translated, of course, to him as a filmmaker. I think that was kind of his many gifts, his real kind of principal gift.
And you also, I believe, if I read the text on the Bologna website, right, you actually would hang out in his loft when he stayed there.
That's right. That's where I thought Howard lived. Bob told me that, as great as his success was with Einstein on the Beach was, he was left with tons of debt. And the only place where he could work, really, was in Europe. And so he had this loft, and Howard needed a place to stay, so Howard stayed there. So as a kid, I grew up right by Washington Square Park, and I remember going over there. And one memory in particular was, I've discovered, July 4th, 1986. I was 4.5. And which sounds crazy that I would remember, but I remember these huge fireworks displays from the 4th of July. And Oren's wife at the time, Judith, who's here, actually came up with photographs she had taken from that night, from that day, which validates the memory. The sky's filled with fireworks. The Hudson River is filled with ships. And there I was with Howard and my dad in my little red Adidas jumpsuit. So that's where I, went to see Howard. That was his home, as far as I was concerned.
In a way that makes this tonight such a long journey for you, quite literally.
Yes.
But on the, you bring up photographs and this documentation is proof. And I was wondering if we could get into the process, how the work that went into finding the materials and kind of resurrecting this film, making it something that we all have access to and will continue to have access to.
Want to start that one?
Sure.
There's a lot.
So it was around 2011, and we had a really little kid. We lived in London, and Aaron's grandmother lived in Miami. So when we had a chance to go and see her and stay with our baby there and escape a bit of the winter in London, we just took that chance. And so we spent a few months during the warm Miami winter. And one day we were looking through photographs in one of her drawers, and we found one notebook that only had 2 pages written. And it was a notebook from Howard. And the notebook said, if you're reading this, I just found out I have AIDS a few days ago, and if you're reading this, I am no more. But really, don't worry. I had a great life, and you will remember me from my films. And Aaron and I looked at each other and said, "Oh, the films, great! Can we see the films?" And Aaron said, "No, I saw the films in VHS some time ago." So wait a minute. He wants to be remembered by his films, but the films are nowhere to be found. So we both felt that that was, okay, how difficult could that be? It's, what, 2 films that he made, 2 documentaries, and 1 other big studio film, but maybe the documentaries, which were independent films, we can bring them back. And that kind of started this whole process of trying to find the films. And it's a very, very long journey, but that was what kickstarted it for us. And that letter kind of had this, I don't know, this big responsibility almost from saying, wait a minute, you want to be remembered for this? And also for me, not only am Aaron's partner in life, but also as a producer, I was like, I know what an important figure Howard is for him as a filmmaker, and he was his inspiration. We need to make sure that the world doesn't forget him as a filmmaker. And the only way not to forget a filmmaker is to know their films, and to be able to see their films. So what started a bit of a, we're escaping from the winter and looking at something, became 15 years of impossible work, and made possible, and made possible, of course, because there is the New York Film Festival, there is Janus, there is Criterion, there are you here, and all of the family that we also inherited from Howard, which are all his friends and loves, and little by little they sustained this whole process. This is what I can kickstart.
And then there was the practical side of it as well. In 2011, we reached out to Orrin Wexberg, Howard's co-producer of this film, when we started looking for bringing back Howard's work. And he had materials, we're very excited about that. And then Hurricane Sandy happened, and he lost everything. His whole place was flooded and was devastated, as you can imagine. And we kept going. We found materials in Hamburg. I remember getting a call when we were searching, and they said, "We have many boxes of schnitzel." It's like, how many boxes? And we don't know things. So I didn't know. I was in London at the time, and we were like, well, how is shipping going to cost, whatever. So I just drove. I drove from Hamburg. I drove from London to Hamburg, and got there to the archive. And it's actually in the movie Uncle Howard. In my naivete, because what would I know? I mean, about film. I was like, oh, great, I've got the negatives, I've got the film prints, I got these schnipsel, must be the sound. They weren't. It wasn't the negative. It wasn't, the prints were in not such good shape. And the schnipsel, which I thought was, okay, maybe we can reconstruct the sound. No, they were just like little pieces here and there. So it was a very long, arduous process, and then searching for the different kind of components, finding a print in the end, that when we finally got through all of the archive Howard had left in the bunker, all the Burroughs things, we actually found a print as well later on. This is about, what, 2017?
On a box that we were not paying attention
No,
to,
it was
because
like,
we
oh,
had no
this is
resources,
not,
so we were going through things methodically and going like, oh, that one, I don't know, let's get to that when we finish the Burroughs thing.
Yeah.
It took us another 5 years to get to the box that finally had the print.
And as I said before, I mean, every version always had dubbing. All the interviews in German and French had some sort of dubbing, and it really kind of, that was a big, just a big push. Really, this was very hard. But really, again, I mean, every time that, I'm very lucky that, Paula kept us going and kept pushing for it. But also every time I, started to feel like sorry for myself or whatever, I kind of turned to the movie, and would look at what Bob went through for this, and the fact that this was such a great documentation of the project that really had such a beautiful intention. He told me, the original charter of the Olympics was for a civil competition between athletes and artists. It was about bringing together culture, arts, all these things. And over time, of course, it became more about sports. But he really, believed in this idea of bringing different people from different cultures, different political beliefs, different religious backgrounds all together, and fought so hard for it. And then, of course, I thought of, wow, my God, how hard this must have been for Howard, for Marcus, for Orrin to produce a film where you're traveling around the world, shooting on film, trying to keep up with this, trying to keep up with Bob, which is no small feat itself. And so, come on, we can do it. But it did take time and a lot of effort and resources.
No, it's quite something. The process of being able to see this film, how similar in some ways it turned. Like this film documents a Herculean effort to make a piece of theater, and I think it's also a film about how we take for granted the work that we have access to, and when we see work, we don't always think about what goes necessarily into the making of it, but we also don't think about what happens afterwards and preserving and archiving. So thank you again.
We always say films don't distribute themselves. Like, people don't understand that. Like, sometimes, I'm originally from Argentina, and a lot of times in my family, people say, so those films that you make, when are we going to be able to see them in the movie just around the corner? And I have to explain the process of how filmmaking gets distributed and picked, and it's amazing how little people know about that, and they think everything comes from this automatic process of producing and distributing. And yeah.
No, it's a beautiful film that combines kind of those realities with the great art and the great work, and also just the relationship. I always see it when he's on the phone in the end and the camera zooms in, and you just see like a slight stress on the face, and it's like such beautiful filmmaking. Now, I know this summer Robert Wilson was at the screening. I'm curious, did he talk to you at all about the movie? About watching it again?
Yeah, that was amazing. I mean, it was really, I mean, I'm very sad he's not with us anymore, Bob. He was really, really special, and the film was selected to a Cinema Retrovato in Bologna, and Bob kept working all the time. I mean, in fact, I remember calling him up on the phone saying, Bob, we got selected to a Cinema Retrovato. Aaron, I'm getting on a plane, but that's wonderful. I would love to come. It's like, great, it's amazing, And he drove from Ljubljana, where he was working on a production, and came to Bologna, and it was really remarkable. I mean, I don't think Bob saw the film since it came out, and I was sitting next to him, watching him, watch this passage of his life, at the end of his life, and he had just this kind of amazing expression of wonder, as Bob did. The way he saw the world was really kind of open and pure and beautiful, and I did get to ask him one question, because one of the also hard parts about bringing back a film without the filmmaker, without the producer, without the producers, there's a lot of questions that come up. And naturally you want to turn like, well, should this be like this? Should that be like that? And no one, so you have to interpret. But one thing I always wondered, I mean, I love Otis Redding, but like, why the Otis Redding song? And he told me this story that he was working, because Bob started as a teacher, and he had seen Tina Turner opening for Otis Redding in Madison Square Garden, and he was working with these children in Iron Lungs, and he asked Otis Redding if he would come sing to them. And he did, and he sang that song, I've Been Loving You, Too Long, to these children. And Bob told Howard that story, and that's why Howard put that song in the movie. So that was really kind of special to get to hear that, uncover that mystery, and to hear the reason why.
I'd love, you're a filmmaker as well, and I'd love to hear you maybe talk a little bit about discovering your uncle's work as you yourself became a filmmaker, and maybe just to talk a little bit for anyone that doesn't know in the audience just about the work that he made, which you've been doing such a great job of saving.
Yeah, well, filmmaking is like kung fu. You can't fake it, and you have to show it. And I felt that way when I was, it was hard to explain who Howard was. It was hard to explain the feeling that he gave to me as a person, as a filmmaker. And so, really I had set out to make a movie about Howard. And, I think, filmmaking is many different things, but Howard really, I think what he taught me most as a filmmaker is that it can really be anything. And it's really about the emotion, that you bring to it. And I think of Howard's career of making, documentary on William Burroughs, and then this documentary on on Bob Wilson, which goes beyond the artist but into the work, to then making a film, Bloodhounds of Broadway, a musical with Madonna and Matt Dillon and all these people, and the through line is him and the way that he saw the world and the way that point of view gets channeled through the camera. One of the most thrilling things about a documentary is you can put a camera anywhere. There's like a million options, but it's where you focus on, and that's really what the essence of it is. And I've carried that through in the films I've directed, the films that I've written, the films that I've produced, and I think together the company that we run and the films that we choose, the through line with everything we've done is it has to have a point of view, and we'll get behind something, whether it's my work as a director or somebody else's films. If it's got a clear point of view, we want to, champion in that, and that's kind of the main thing I would say.
I think, well, I always ask this because sometimes you don't know the right question to ask. Is there anything else that you think everyone should know or that you want to say about the film? Well, because
How many days do you have?
I mean, we have a little time.
I think, what I want to say is, thank you. Thank you for putting the film. Thank you for coming. Keep watching films in cinemas. Keep watching films that maybe don't have the typical path, like anything that you see that kind of calls your attention may not have like the biggest marketing behind it, but it might be a hidden gem. And that's kind of, as a creator, as a producer, as a writer myself, that's my fear, that we're losing a lot of these stories that are less manufactured and more crafted, and they come from, an artist, and they talk to us about the human scale. Not everything needs to be, an activist or I'm kind of fearing that we're losing a lot of that, and I'm just thankful that we are able to bring this film here. Yeah.
Well, we're very thankful too, and again, thank you all for coming, because they can all do the work to make the film an actual object that we can screen, and we can all do the work of programming it and putting it on a movie screen. But if you all don't come, then that work is meaningless. So thank you, everyone, for coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.